Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
I'm in a really tough situation, and I could use some advice. I'm on the board of my co-op building, and we had a major flood a few months back. It was pretty bad. A lot of residents had to move out temporarily, and one person even ended up in the hospital. Since then, I've been trying to get answers about how the insurance claim and repairs are being handled, but I'm hitting roadblocks left and right. At first, I was just asking our property manager, PM, and other board members for a breakdown of the costs and expenses related to the flood damage. They gave us shareholders a basic overview, but the numbers seemed off to me. They said we spent $350,000 on emergency services, but wouldn't explain what that actually covered. Another $90,000 went to repairs for things like the boiler and elevator. $90,000 more for packing and storing residents' belongings. And $470,000 was supposedly left for apartment and common area repairs. The construction crews estimated $850,000 for all the repair work, but then I found out an extra $380,000 was taken from our co-op's funds to cover the rest, without anyone consulting the board or shareholders. That's a huge amount of money to spend without approval. I started asking more questions. Where did the insurance deductible come from? What exactly did that $350K in emergency services pay for? Can we see itemized invoices for the moving and storage costs? But I kept getting the runaround. Sometimes they'd say those documents don't exist. Other times they'd just ignore my emails and calls completely. Then things got really weird. The head of our board sent out an email saying, "Do not disclose any documents to my name." 2 other board members agreed with her. I couldn't believe it. Why are they trying to hide information from me, a fellow board member who's just trying to look out for our co-op? The more I dig, the more suspicious things seem. I found out the moving company sent their invoice directly to the repair company instead of us. And get this, the repair company's office is right across the street from our property manager's office. Seems awfully convenient, doesn't it? Our treasurer is claiming he doesn't have certain financial documents, which makes no sense for someone in his position. I'm exhausted from dealing with all this, but I can't just let it go. Something shady is definitely going on here. I've been gathering evidence for weeks now. I'm planning to talk to a lawyer tomorrow to get some professional advice on how to proceed. I've also reached out to some friends who've connected me with people who might be able to help or at least offer guidance. After weeks of pestering them, I finally got some of the invoices I'd been asking for, but they still won't give me everything. The breakdown of that $350K for emergency services is still really vague, and the repair estimates I've seen only add up to $470K, not the $850K they claimed before. The numbers just aren't adding up. We had a special meeting to review documents, and that's when I finally got an answer about that extra $380K they spent without approval. Apparently, it was for water removal, dehumidifying, and rush repairs. But even that explanation is fishy. The document they showed us had $400K written on it originally, but that number was crossed out and changed to $380K. The PM claims it was a verbal agreement with the vendor, but when I asked if there was any way to verify that, she got super defensive and started yelling at me. At this point, I'm not sure if the board members are in on whatever's happening or if they're just incompetent. But I'm really suspicious of our property manager. Something's not right here. To make matters worse, I just found out there have been 2 lawsuits against the repair company we used. Both involved accusations of misappropriating funds. That can't be a coincidence, right? I'm at my wit's end here. I want to do right by my neighbors and make sure our co-op's money isn't being misused, but I'm not sure how to prove what's going on. Are they getting kickbacks? Is it just gross mismanagement? How do I even begin to untangle all of this? If anyone has been through something similar or has any advice on how to proceed, I'd really appreciate it. I'm feeling pretty alone in this fight right now, and I could use all the help and support I can get. Should I go to the authorities? Try to get the other shareholders involved? I'm worried about potential retaliation if I push too hard, but I also can't just sit back and watch this happen. Any suggestions would be really welcome at this point. So here's a bit more detail on how it all started. The flood happened late one night. I remember waking up to the sound of water rushing through the hallways. It was like something out of a nightmare. By the time I got out of bed and opened my door, water was already seeping into my apartment. I could hear my neighbors shouting and scrambling to save their belongings. It was complete chaos. The emergency services arrived pretty quickly, but the damage was already done. The water had flooded several floors and the building's infrastructure took a huge hit. The boiler room was submerged, the elevators were out of commission, and the electrical systems were compromised. It was a disaster. In the days that followed, the property manager assured us that everything was under control. They said they were working with the insurance company, and that repairs would begin soon. But as the weeks turned into months, it became clear that things were not progressing as they should. Residents were still displaced, and the few repairs that had been done seemed haphazard at best. That's when I started asking for more information. I wanted to understand where our money was going and why the repairs were taking so long. But every time I asked, I was met with vague answers and evasions. It was incredibly frustrating. One of the first red flags was the $350,000 for emergency services. When I asked for a detailed breakdown of what that covered, I was told it included things like water extraction, mold remediation, and temporary power generators. But when I asked for invoices or receipts, I was told those documents didn't exist or were not available for review. It didn't make sense. Then there was the $90,000 for repairs to the boiler and elevator. Again, I asked for more details. What exactly was repaired? Were these temporary fixes or permanent solutions? The answers I got were always the same, vague and unhelpful. And the $90,000 for packing and storing residents' belongings seemed exorbitant. How could it cost that much just to move and store some furniture and personal items? The final straw was when I discovered the extra $380,000 taken from our co-op's funds without approval. This was a huge amount of money, and it was spent without any consultation with the board or shareholders. When I confronted the property manager about it, she became defensive and evasive. She claimed it was for emergency repairs, and that there was a verbal agreement with the vendor. But when I asked for documentation to back up this claim, she couldn't provide any. At this point, I was convinced something shady was going on. I started digging deeper, looking into the background of the repair company and the property manager. That's when I discovered the lawsuits against the repair company for misappropriating funds. It was like a puzzle piece falling into place. I couldn't shake the feeling that our property manager was somehow involved in this scheme. I decided to gather as much evidence as I could. I started documenting every interaction I had with the property manager and the board. I saved emails, took notes during meetings, and kept copies of any documents I could get my hands on. I also reached out to other shareholders to see if they had noticed anything suspicious. Some of them had, but many were just as in the dark as I was. I knew I needed professional help, so I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer. I wanted to understand my legal options and figure out the best course of action. The lawyer advised me to continue gathering evidence and to document everything meticulously. She also suggested I reach out to the authorities if I had concrete proof of wrongdoing. In the meantime, I tried to rally support from other shareholders. I organized informal meetings to discuss our concerns and share information. Some people were hesitant to get involved, fearing retaliation from the property manager or the board. Others were more supportive and agreed to help me gather evidence. One of the most frustrating aspects of this whole ordeal has been the lack of transparency. As a board member, I should have access to all financial documents and records related to the flood and the repairs. But every time I asked for something, I was met with resistance. It felt like I was being stonewalled at every turn. The special meeting we had to review documents was a turning point. It was clear that the property manager and some board members were trying to cover something up. The document showing the $380,000 expenditure was a mess. The original amount of $400,000 had been crossed out and changed to $380,000, with no explanation. When I questioned this, the property manager became defensive and started yelling at me. It was a clear sign that something was very wrong. I also discovered that the moving company had sent their invoice directly to the repair company, not to us. This was highly unusual and raised even more questions. Why would the moving company bypass us and deal directly with the repair company? And why was the repair company's office located right across the street from our property manager's office? It all seemed too convenient. The more I uncovered, the more convinced I became that there was some sort of collusion between the property manager and the repair company. The lawsuits against the repair company for misappropriating funds only added to my suspicions. It was clear that we were dealing with a company that had a history of shady dealings. I felt a sense of responsibility to my fellow shareholders. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. Our co-op's money was being misused, and it was up to me to do something about it. But I also knew that I had to be careful. If I pushed too hard without solid evidence, I could face retaliation or even legal action. So I continued to gather evidence and document everything. I reached out to more shareholders, trying to build a coalition of support. I also stayed in close contact with my lawyer, seeking her advice on every step I took. One of the hardest parts of this whole ordeal has been the toll it's taken on my mental and emotional well-being. I've lost sleep, my stress levels have skyrocketed, and I've even had moments where I questioned whether it was worth it. But every time I thought about giving up, I reminded myself why I was doing this. I wanted to protect my neighbors and ensure that our co-op's money was being used properly. As I prepared for my meeting with the lawyer, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. I knew that this was a critical step in my fight for transparency and accountability. I hoped that with her help I could finally get to the bottom of what was going on and hold those responsible accountable. In the meantime, I continued to gather support from other shareholders. I organized more informal meetings and shared the evidence I had collected. Slowly but surely, more people started to see the bigger picture and understand the gravity of the situation. It was a small victory, but it gave me the strength to keep going. As I sit here writing this, I still don't have all the answers, but I know that I'm doing the right thing by standing up for what's right. I hope that by sharing my story, I can inspire others to do the same. If anyone has been through something similar or has any advice on how to proceed, I'd really appreciate it. I'm feeling pretty alone in this fight right now, and I could use all the help and support I can get. Should I go to the authorities? Try to get the other shareholders involved? I'm worried about potential retaliation if I push too hard, but I also can't just sit back and watch this happen. Any suggestions would be really welcome at this point. While this is absolutely infuriating, I can't believe the level of shadiness and corruption going on in your co-op. It's clear as day that someone, or multiple someones, is skimming money off the top and trying to cover their tracks. The fact that they're actively trying to hide information from you, a board member, is a massive red flag. And those convenient connections between the property manager, repair company, and moving company, yeah right, total coincidence. I'm sure you're doing the right thing by digging into this, and not letting it go. These crooks are counting on people getting tired and giving up. Don't let them win. Keep pushing for those documents and explanations. The changing numbers, vague invoices, and missing paperwork all point to some serious financial funny business. My advice? Go nuclear. Get a lawyer ASAP and start building a case. Reach out to your local news stations. Nothing lights a fire under corrupt officials like the threat of public exposure. And definitely loop in the other shareholders. They deserve to know their money is potentially being stolen. You might face some backlash, but staying silent makes you complicit. Plus, there are whistleblower protections for a reason. Don't back down now. You're onto something big here, and your neighbors are counting on you, even if they don't know it yet. Good luck and keep fighting the good fight. This whole situation reeks of a cover-up. I've seen this kind of thing before in my HOA, and let me tell you, it only gets worse if you don't nip it in the bud. The board members stonewalling you are either in on it or too lazy scared to rock the boat. Either way, they're not doing their jobs. Here's what I'd do. First, start documenting everything. Every email, every phone call, every lost document. Create a paper trail a mile long. Next, brush up on your co-op's bylaws and any relevant state laws. Knowledge is power, and they're counting on you not knowing your rights. Then rally the troops. Find other shareholders who are as pissed off as you are. There's strength in numbers, and it's harder for the board to ignore a group than just one person. Consider calling for a special meeting to address these concerns. Most bylaws allow for this if enough shareholders request it. Don't be afraid to get loud about this. Post flyers, create a Facebook group, whatever it takes to get people's attention. And definitely follow through on talking to a lawyer. They might be able to help you file for an injunction or force an audit. Lastly, don't underestimate the power of shame. If board members are trying to sweep this under the rug, make it known publicly. Sometimes peer pressure is the only thing that works on these types. Stay strong and don't give up. It's exhausting fighting against corruption, but someone's got to do it. Your neighbors are lucky to have someone like you looking out for them. Oh honey, you've stumbled into a real mess here. But let me tell you something, you're not alone. This kind of shady business happens all the time in co-ops and condos. I've seen it firsthand and it's always the same story. A few greedy individuals think they can line their pockets at everyone else's expense. My heart goes out to you because I know how isolating and frustrating this can be. It's like banging your head against a wall, right? But here's the thing, you're doing the right thing by not backing down. Too many people just shrug their shoulders and say that's just how it is, but it doesn't have to be. Now, I'm no lawyer, but it sounds to me like you've got a pretty solid case for some serious financial mismanagement, if not outright fraud. Those changing numbers and missing documents, classic signs of cooking the books. And that email telling people not to give you info, honey, that's obstruction plain and simple. My advice, keep digging, but watch your back. These types can get nasty when cornered. Make sure you've got backups of all your evidence somewhere safe, and definitely get that lawyer involved ASAP. You might even want to consider reaching out to your state's Attorney General's office. They sometimes have special units for housing fraud. Don't let them bully you into silence. You're fighting for your home and your neighbors' homes. That's worth standing up for. And who knows, you might just inspire others to start asking questions too. Sometimes all it takes is one brave soul to get the ball rolling. Hang in there, sweetie. It's a tough road ahead, but you're doing the right thing. And remember, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Keep shining that light.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.